Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Johnson. I want to share with you something that was sent to me. This is written by Mildred Honor, who lives in Des Moines, Iowa, and she's an elementary music teacher. She writes, and these are her own words, I've always supplemented my income by teaching piano lessons, something I've done for over 30 years. During those years, I've found that children have many levels of musical ability, and even though I've never had the pleasure of having a prodigy, I have taught some very talented students. I've also had my share of what you would call musically challenged pupils. One of these was named Robby. Robby was 11 years old when his mother, a single mom, dropped him off, or his first piano lesson. I prefer that students, especially boys, begin at an earlier age, which I explained to Robby. But Robby said that it was always his mother's dream to hear him play the piano, so I took him as a student. Well, Robby began his lessons, and from the beginning I thought it was a hopeless endeavor. As much as Robby tried, he lacked the sense of tone and basic rhythm needed to excel, but he dutifully reviewed his scales and some elementary piano pieces that I require all my students to learn. Over the months he tried and tried while I listened and cringed and tried to encourage him. At the end of each weekly lesson he would always say, "My mom's going to hear me play someday," but to me it seemed hopeless. He just didn't have any innate ability. I only knew his mother from a distance as she dropped Robby off, waited in her aged car to pick him up. She always waved and smiled, but she never dropped in to meet me. Then one day Robby stopped coming to his lessons. I thought about calling him, but assumed that because of his lack of ability, he decided to pursue something else. I was also glad that he had stopped coming. It was a bad advertisement for my teaching. Several weeks later, I mailed a flyer recital to the students' homes. To my surprise, Robby, who had received a flyer, asked me if he could be in the recital. I told him that the recital was for current pupils and that because he had dropped out, he really didn't qualify. He told me that his mother had been sick and unable to take him to his piano lessons, but that he had continued to practice. "Please, Miss Honor, I've just got to play," he insisted. I don't know what led me to allow him to play in the recital. Perhaps it was his insistence, or maybe something inside of me saying it would be all right, but I gave him permission and told him he could play. The night of the recital came and the high school gymnasium was packed. Parents, relatives, friends. I put Robby last on the program just before I was to come up and thank all the students as they played their finishing pieces. I thought that any damage he might do would come at the end of the program, and I could always salvage his poor performance with some kind of curtain closer. Well, the recital went off without a hitch. Students had been practicing and it showed. Then Robby came up on the stage. His clothes were wrinkled and his hair looked as though he had run an egg beater through it. Why wasn't he dressed like the other students? Didn't anybody care about him and how he looked? Why didn't his mother at least make him comb his hair for that special night? Robby pulled out the piano bench and I was surprised when he announced he had chosen to play Mozart's Concerto No. 21 in C major. I wasn't prepared for what I heard next. His fingers were light on the keys. They even danced nimbly on the ivories. He went from pianissimo to fortissimo, from allegro to virtuoso. His suspended chords that Mozart demanded were magnificent. Never had I heard Mozart played so well by anyone, let alone his age. After 6.5 minutes, he ended in a grand crescendo, and everyone was on their feet in wild applause. Overcome and in tears, I ran up on stage, put my arms around Robby in joy, said, "I never heard you play like that, Robby. How did you do it?" Through the microphone, Robby explained, "Well, Miss Honor, remember I told you my mom was sick? She actually had cancer. She passed away this morning. She was born deaf, so tonight was the first time that she could probably hear me play, and I wanted to make it special." Well, I don't need to tell you there wasn't a dry eye in the house that evening As the people from social services led Robby from the stage to be placed into foster care, I noticed even their eyes were red and puffy. I thought to myself how much richer my life had been for taking Robby as my pupil. No, I've never had a prodigy. That night, I became a prodigy of Robby. He was the teacher, I was the pupil. He had taught me the meaning of perseverance and love and believing in yourself, and maybe even taking a chance on someone and you didn't know why. Robby was killed years later in a senseless bombing of the Alfred P. Murray Federal Building in Oklahoma City in April 1995. But I'll never forget him. And you know, if you're thinking that you won't make an impression on somebody's life, maybe the important question is, like Robby did to me, is it possible that they will make an impression on you and teach you something you'll never forget? This was written by Mildred Honor, who lives in Des Moines, Iowa, an elementary music school teacher, and her encounter with Robby. Give yourself a chance to understand that you can make an impression, that you can help, and indeed, the impression may return, may not only make an impression on you in your life, but it may help you as well.